Hello, one and all, and welcome back to another thrilling episode of Off the Dome. I'm your humble interviewer, Jordan Brown. With me for the very first time is Raven Bartlett. Say hi, Raven Bartlett.
Hi, Raven Bartlett.
So, Raven, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to talk to you about all things Dimension 20, but really want to dive into Burrow's end. But before we get there, I was looking at to plug your website, birdpair.com. I was scrolling through that and your LinkedIn and seeing everything that you've done. You are the on-set model maker for Dimension 20, for at least this season, I should say. What exactly does that entail and mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that means that I am on set during the mini shoot, and I am doing all of the effects, like spell effects, fun little tricks. I'm working with Casey McGeorge, who is doing most of the puppeting and setting the shots up. And so the two of us work on the mini shoot together.
Cool. Yeah. So in the battle, when we, the audience, get to see the close up inside a bear carcass, for example, you're responsible for a flash of blue or whatever is happening in those.
Yeah,
it's super cool.
We work together with Kevin.
It looks like
and Lisa is our does a lot of the lighting effects, and so it's a really awesome team of people who come together and do all of those fun effects.
That's awesome. It obviously turns out incredible every season. In particular, it feels like every season it is upped its ante, including this one. It looks like you have a kind of similar D20 pipeline that Casey has of theater into dimension, theater construction into Dimension 20. Does that feel like a natural transition of I was building sets and now I'm building just smaller sets?
Yeah, actually, so I studied set design, and so did Casey. And a big part of set design for theater is building scale models of your final design. So it's to show the director and the other design team and the production team how you want the final outcome to look. So I did have a background in miniatures through theater in that way. The methodology is a little bit different between the two fields, theater and TV and film. But there's a lot of just crossover skills that made it kind of a natural transition. And I do think the theater to D&D pipeline is very strong. So it did definitely feel kind of an accumulation of all of my interests and skills.
Yeah. That's incredible. Were you playing D&D prior to this? Or have you I assume this has increased your love of it.
Yes.
I don't know how it
for sure increased my love of it. But
were you
I started playing D&D in high school with my little high school friend group. Yeah.
That's cool.
There's awesome. A little bit of a delay, so apologies if I speak over you.
No, not at all. It's perfectly fine. I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you for having me.
Was your first season Never After?
Yes.
So you came in with Wolf Soup and the Terrible Dogfish, out the gate. What a wild, all-time entry into Dimension 20. Could you just talk a little bit about the creation of those two iconic, I guess, maxis, but iconic in Dimension 20 history?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were doing the Never After build up on Lopez Island, where Rick lives, and he has a shop set up there, and it was so amazing to work there. It's beautiful, and he has all of the tools that you could need. And something that I really, really love about working with Rick is that he is very like he's all for experimentation and like figuring out new ways of doing things. And so with the wolf soup, I had never worked with resin before coming on D20. And so we knew we wanted to do like a vegetable soup with a wolf in it. And the wolf was painted by Shane Brockway, our lead minis painter. And then the rest of the like cauldron soup insides, all of that was me. And so I got to just kind of experiment with like, okay, what would happen if I, made these pieces out of foam, clay, etc. Painting the inside of the resin pour and then also tinting the resin pour. And so I did some tests, and then Rick would look at the tests and approve things or like want to change things. And ultimately the process was we work a lot with insulation foam. So the cauldron itself was just carved out of insulation foam and then covered in 5-minute epoxy and painted. And then the inside, all of the pieces like the corn, the peas, the mushroom, celery, etc., was all little chunks of foam, or we use a lot of epoxy sculpt as a like 2-part epoxy clay, or green stuff, which is a pretty standard material in the industry. So that was all just sculpted. And then I poured tinted resin over it. And we also used these like little plastic like half rounds as bubbles. And we were experimenting a lot with like how to make it look like it was like alive. And then I actually also, there is some real, I think, mustard seed and thyme or rosemary or something. Like there are real spices in the soup. So that was really fun and like an amazing experimentation. And then the Dogfish, actually, initially we had an STL that we were going to just fully print for the Dogfish. But because it was so massive, it was going to take us like 3 weeks to print it. Like it was like material wise, like expense wise for the resin, and time wise was the big thing. We just didn't have time. And I think it was also like a space thing. Maybe our 3D printer didn't have the capacity to print something that size. So what we ended up doing was printing just like the central like teeth part. And then I sculpted the rest of it, also using a base of insulation foam and then building up with foil and clay until we got to the final volume and detail that we wanted. And that was also a fun experience of learning airbrush for me, because I had never worked with airbrush before D20 as well. And so Rick showed me how to use the airbrush on that, and I did all of the base painting with an airbrush. So yeah, like I'll say it a million times, like I love so much how every season we do something so different that I'm always learning. And so I feel very like intellectually and artistically invigorated and challenged by the show, because I'm constantly learning new skills and I'm constantly experimenting and exploring into new areas and creating really interesting new things.
Amazing. The Dogfish and wolf soup especially, like I remember as like a huge fan of the show, obviously. I remember the like fan reaction to those sets was just like, I mean, we've seen great sets on Dimension 20 for many years, but like just those felt really special. And I'm wondering if you were you a big fan of Dimension 20? Were you aware of it? Did you know sort of like the Calroy Cruller of it all? Like I'm coming into people who have like done some serious mini work of a bar that you immediately cleared.
I was familiar with D20, but not very familiar. I think I'd seen maybe one season before I started working on the show. And I've seen a couple more now. I love the show. I'm a huge, like the talent of everyone that they bring into the Dome, DM, players, just like the talent of the community working around in production and in Video Village is unbelievable. And I feel incredibly lucky to be a part of it. So a huge fan of the show myself. Just like everything that we all do is, it's truly amazing. But before working on the show, like I don't think I was aware of how like deeply meaningful it was to so many people.
Yeah, we're real weird about it. I'm sorry if that has been a weird parasocial thing that has happened to you.
No, it's been
I would say
amazing.
like one of the things that I love about like oh good one of the things that I love about the like production is that we like as fans get to see a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that like you and Kelsey and Casey and everybody are posting. You know, like here's the Bertel of like and like here's how we got that like opening shot of like it flipping open and it's like swooping in. Like it's really cool, and I feel like a thing that makes the community feel more connected. Uh, um, but also, I mean, probably feels weird because then people like me are like, "Hey, Raven, you come like spend an hour of your day chatting with me about the work you do."
Yeah. But I love it. Like I love it. I love sharing the process with people because there is so much that goes into it, and there's so much that people don't see. Just like if you look at the credits of the people who work on Dimension 20, it's like pages and pages and pages of like incredibly talented folks that all come together to make what you see on screen. So yeah, I love sharing a little bit of that process with everyone because I think it's so beautiful to just have a peek into the village.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I mean, you mentioned like the talent in the dome that we see on camera. I think one of the cool parts of the D20 community is there is a really strong appreciation for the talent outside of the dome as
Yeah.
well. And that is obviously what I had hoped to bring to this little silly series. But so your work on Burrow's End. I know when I originally reached out, it was about because I was reaching out to everyone that Brennan called nasty on the long list of people in the adventuring party, I know you said you didn't have a lot to do with bear construction, but you
Yeah.
obviously were there for like excavating this to steal a phrase from Kelsey, excavating the mini to get your interior shots. So what was that process like of like okay, and what I guess sort of like generally what is that process like of all right, we've got the battle that they did, now we want to show it as dynamically as possible for the viewer at home.
Yeah, yeah. So after, or I guess as they're shooting, the director Michael Schabach is creating a shot list, and he is like clocking like, ooh, that feels like it's going to be a really interesting or dynamic mini shoot shot, or like, okay, this is an establishing shot we want to get. So he's like doing all that work while they're shooting and after they're shooting, and then he'll send that shot list to Casey, and Casey will go through the shot list and sort of mark up and look through like, okay, this feels like a shot that we're just going to stage the minis. This feels like a shot that we're going to need to craft something for. Like, are we going to need a spell effect for this? Are we going to need a like clawed off face of a chipmunk? And then with that shot list, for Burrow's End specifically, I went back through and like scrubbed through all of the raw footage. And when something was called out, I would just listen to what it was described as. And I had a little station that was like a room that was sort of next to where we were shooting that had all of my like art supplies and paintbrushes and all of that set up. And so I could quickly go into that room, build something, and then like kick it back out to KC to set up the shot. And then they would go into like actually shooting that close up. So my experience with the mini shoot is primarily just like making sure that I'm staying. Typically, I like to stay a battle ahead of what they're shooting, so that I can have all of the effects prepped for the next day of shooting. And it's kind of just like going through and being like, okay, all right, now I'm going to build this. Now I'm going to build this. Now I'm going to build this. And then whenever there was a shot that required a 2-person puppeting or more elaborate setup, then Casey would pull me out and we would collaborate on that together.
Cool. So it sounds like you're doing that like not like but basically almost simultaneously as like cast is filming. Then what is the delay like of like
Yeah.
cast in the dome, you on the mini shoots?
Yeah, it's not simultaneous for sure. We shot the Burrows End mini shoot maybe a month after the cast was in the dome. But it also changes per season. Sometimes we'll shoot it right after. Sometimes there'll be a long gap because we'll often shoot seasons back to back, and then we'll shoot the mini shoot season. Like we'll do the mini shoot back to back as well. So it kind of all depends on the season length and what else we're doing with Dropout and all that jazz.
Yeah, it's super cool. Were you doing similar things then for Never After? I only ask because what then was your response? I don't know if you're on set and if you saw Lou Wilson put an orange hat in his mouth and think that potentially you no longer had like a key component for the mini shoot.
No, that's so funny. I was not on set for Never After. The first season that I was on set for was Ravening War. My experience with Never After was fully on Lopez Island. Never After was we built like what we did up on Lopez Island and then shipped it down to LA, and then there was also a team of people in LA that like finished it or did other stuff on the season. So Ravening War being the first season I was on set for, and then consequentially the first season that I was involved in the mini shoot for.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know I have so many questions and they're all in my head at once. I know that you mentioned that you worked on the DM screen for this season for Burrow's End, and I'm curious. So we've seen now that the DM screen changes, I think for the first time in Dimension 20 history, which is super cool. That like the doors are open and there's blue light. And seemingly, I think throughout the entire table that there is blue light. And I don't like. I know Abria has talked about like it's an arms race every time she steps into the dome. Like she wants more projections. She wants the wildest like mini battle set that you can imagine. But I feel like this also sort of ups that ante of not only is everything else changing, but the DM screen itself is changing. Can you talk a bit about like that process working with her and I assume Carlos and Rick of like what they wanted to like convey on a DM screen?
Yeah, for sure. I think so I for Burrow's End, I was not involved in the creative meetings. I transitioned from art directing to lead model making. And so I was like wanting to get my hands back in the like physical sets of it all. So my role on the DM screen was pretty solidly just like creating it. So I can't really speak much to the creative meetings between Abria, Carlos, and Rick. They are absolute masterminds and they come up with the most amazing things. But in terms of the process, yeah, we have done slight changes in DM screens over the course of seasons before. In Ravening War, as the time jumps happened, we added more rot and mold to the DM screens, and then we also added mushrooms. But I think that this is definitely the most like I guess like rooted in storytelling and like bold, noticeable change. And yeah, I think a big part of that is the integration of lighting into the DM screens. We started working with a company called Evans Designs in Colorado, and they do all these amazing custom fabricated, like we'll like ask for, 2 strobing mini diode lights and like 5, warm toned lightning flashlights. And like, they'll send us the components basically, and we'll plug it all in and wire it all up and put it into the DM screen. And I think that has been, in my experience of being on Dimension 20 from Never After to now, really elevating the game. Like, I think everything we put lights into is so beautiful. So having there be light in this DM screen and having light, the blue, be such a deep, deep part of the like lore of this world and the importance of the like the story moving forward and having that be revealed. We wanted to have the DM screen like shine light from the center point, like basically the broken down nuclear facility. I don't know actually where that exactly gets revealed in this season. So maybe, yeah. But to have it.
This is going to take you 30 seconds to hear this, but you're fine. I won't post it until after that has been revealed.
Okay. Yeah. So having once that is revealed, having the exploded innards, the like blue radiation showing the walls and the basically like the little facility you see on the top, kind of carrying that down and like giving you more perspective into what's happening underneath, was really exciting. And that was the DM screen was done. It was a collaboration primarily between me and Greg Pinsnow, who is another model maker, very talented, did the little building. Yeah. Do you want me to talk about the like fabrication of it, or are you more interested in how it ties into the storytelling? Or
yes, the answer is yes. Okay. I want to hear it all.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this the process of Burrow's End was it was slightly different than the previous seasons that I had worked on, just because we were doing so much at once. Junior year has been announced now, so this isn't a spoiler, but we were also like prepping for junior year while we were shooting Burrow's End. So a lot of the times we are doing that. We're like working on multiple seasons at once. But this one was just like a beast. Like Burrow's End itself was a beast, and then junior year also. So Rick was pulled a lot more into design world. And Rick is a very like hands-on designer. He likes to be in the shop and working with us, which is really fun. But for these seasons particularly, we had a little bit more structure in terms of how we were setting up the shop systems, and Rick did a lot more of, he was like in meetings all the time and then translating through drawings to us, and would come out to the shop and like do walkthroughs, and did have his hands on some of it, but it was a lot more of a like he had to just be in design mode all the time. So what that meant was I was more involved in the like sculpting of the DM screen, which is usually something that is very in Rick's domain. It's on screen the whole time. It's like a very central piece, so it's really important to get right. And like Rick has like he just like feels it through and like does all this like amazing sculpting usually. Like he did most of the sculpting on the drag DM screen. But anyways, so it was actually like a really it was an honor for me to feel trusted to take on that project from him. And so it was a fun process of, he gave me drawings of like basically like almost like topographical drawings of like, here's the front, here's the top, like here's the like heights that we're interested in, and like okay, I want like rocks and trees and like buildings. And then I would go in and we built the base of the DM screen out of insulation foam. Most of our DM screens have a base of insulation foam. And then we'll carve that back into the like sort of organic rock structures or mountain structures that we're interested in. And then add like we'll cast rocks in plastic and add those in places to give some like really nice detail moments. And so it was like a process of, carving back and checking in with Rick and him making adjustments, and then me like enacting those adjustments. Actually, with the Burrow's End DM screen in particular, we ended up using like the wings, as we call it, are the sides that go back. had a lot of the like cast rocks in them. But once we got to the front of it, we wanted the whole thing to be rock, but sculpting all of that rock out of the foam and then coating all of the foam before we could prime it and paint it was not an efficient use of our time. But also, the rocks that we had cast out of the resin were such a particular shape that it didn't really work for us. So what we actually ended up doing was using the rock molds as like clay molds, where you just like pressed clay into them and then like would use basically like sheets of clay that we had pressed the rock texture into, drape it over the DM screen, and then like sculpt them together and like adjust as needed. And we would typically use epoxy sculpt for that, but we at that point didn't have any epoxy sculpt, and we ended up using some kind of generic air dry clay that ended up cracking in the most amazing way, and added all of this like lovely like visual interest to the like destruction of the cliff face, and was kind of a nightmare to move around because it would crack more and then we'd have to like touch up those gaps. But it like ended up, it was a kind of happy accident that ended up working really well for us. And then for the inside elements, basically we just like carved out the back of the DM screen so that there were like caves basically, and then used styrene to just put together detailed facility walls, and basically just capped the back with those walls and shot light out from that like center area where the door is. So the light would be coming through the doors, but then also spilling out into the caves as well. And then we typically prime, we use like automotive primer because it's really like durable, flexible, good coverage. And we'll prime over everything that we build, and then we paint it, and we use like flocking, and Greg made all those beautiful blue flowers, and Shane Brockway actually had a huge hand in making all of those little pipe cleaner pine trees. So those were all just shaved down pipe cleaners. So yeah, it's like it takes an absolute village to make everything, but it's always so fun.
I mean, the effect is incredible. Because we're on a delay, it's so hard for me not to be like, yes, I love it. And I just like, because I know if I say that, it's going to throw you off a couple of seconds later.
Yeah.
So I'm just understand that I want you to know that like, I'm so excited about all of this. I'm just internalizing all of it so as not to interrupt your sentences.
Yeah.
But so speaking of like that, like the facility on top, and all of that, I don't know if you have seen, but people have gone like full Charlie Day murder board on the internet trying to decipher like what that is, as well as like the language and the opening credits. Like what does that feel like to be like, oh, something I worked on has inspired basically lunacy in people online of like, what does it mean? Like that level of attention to detail on something that you had a hand on. Like, how does that feel?
It's really fun. I actually did not. I've been in a bit of like a transition space in my life right now, so I haven't been on the internet as much as I normally am. So that's fun to hear about. No, I love it. It's interesting because it's kind of like how when you know something really well, trying to teach it to other people is hard because you don't know how to tell people like the basics. I'm not sure if that's a direct analogy, but it feels kind of like I'm so familiar with the season at this point that I look at it and it's so obvious to me what it is. So it's fun to hear about how like people who are following the story for the first time are uncovering all of that.
Yeah, and Kelsey mentioned to me in our interview that part of that thing with the DM screen is people are looking directly at it, and you need to draw their attention away so that they don't basically solve the mystery episode 1. And I think that's also just a really fun detail of like weird work that you have to consider, I guess, of like, all right, well, we know what it is, and we want to make it obvious once you know what it is, that that's what it is. But we want people who are staring at a Bria for 2 hours a week not to immediately be like, I got it, I solved it.
Yes.
That must be, I don't know, it's so fascinating and fun to me.
Yeah, it is. It's a fun challenge because oftentimes the DM screen is actually the last thing that we build. It's the last thing that we like. Rick will have conceptual ideas for it, but we kind of need everything else to be fleshed out before we do the DM screen because Rick likes to put like have it be sort of like encapsulating of the entire story, a referential of certain parts of the story, and so yes, it is a fun puzzle to have it be a piece of art that is abstract enough that it is not like prescriptive as to all of the steps that we're going to be taking, but like supports the atmosphere of the storytelling and becomes aha moments throughout the show. I think for that reason, it is often one of the last things we do.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, it's just incredible work. I'm curious if you, since you said you haven't been online a ton lately, if you saw that at New York City Comic Con, like 2 people were cosplaying as Brennan in like his shirt, but they had like little DM screens that they had like attached to themselves, and one was a Crown of Candy, and one was Eggfort Academy. And both like Kelsey and Rick mentioned that the attention to detail that those people had put into them, they're like, we think they got some of the same kits that we used and like remade them so that they looked not almost as good, but like they looked comparable to what was seen during those seasons. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts of like, I mean, you have basically explained to someone how to rebuild the, more or less, like you've given the very groundwork, if you know how to do it, of like rebuilding this DM screen. So like what is that sort of part of the fun of it all, that you're like, someone's not going to do this for their home game, but in theory they could, right? Like they could, if they had the time and effort, they could get close. Does that like help inspire you when you're building?
Yeah, it is actually someone sent those pictures in the company Slack, and so I did see them, and they were amazing. I did note it. I was like, wow, that is like the exact font. That is like but yes, actually, people do. There are people out there who do make incredibly elaborate DM screens that are inspired by Rick's work on Dimension 20. And it is so amazing to see all of those things. I'll see them on Instagram, and it is really like, I want to be friends with all those people. Like,
I guarantee you those people want to be friends with you. So, Matt, and presumably very soon you're going to start seeing the like imitation DM screen that you helped build of like rocks and like trees and all of those things, and that's then you I think can officially like just be like, no, we are friends now. You built something that I built.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
I am I'm curious, so you've sort of now gotten a chance to work with like the holy trinity of DMs of like Brennan, Matt, and Abria. And I know that you're a lot more behind the scenes, but as someone who is like presumably like grown in you said you were playing D&D since high school. Does that feel as surreal as I imagine it feels to be like, yeah, these are my coworkers, like people who in the larger D&D community would lose their minds about?
Yes, I think it is always like heightened for me based on other people's reactions. Like my friends' reactions to me working with these people, I'm like, oh yeah, this is really amazing. And like, I mean, when I'm in it, it is also really amazing just because of the like absolutely brilliant minds on these people. Like being in creative meetings with. I haven't been in creative meetings with Abria because I wasn't ever art directing on a season that she was on. But being in creative meetings with Matt and Brennan, just like it feels like a masterclass in like creative storytelling and like, and I would say it definitely surreal.
It's, I mean, incredible. And that's, I mean, I think one of the things that people get so excited about with Dimension 20 is that, like, you have that masterful storytelling, creative storytelling aspect of it. And then people like you who are bringing the masterful, like, practical effects that, like, it is just, I think, unparalleled in the TTRPG scene.
Yeah.
And it's the delays. The delays making me so paranoid. I'm sorry. Uh, uh, um, but so speaking to that, like, like that, and you've talked a little bit about like seeing people recreate work and like how cool that is, but like, how does it feel to be part of this like larger fan community and know that like people are excited that like anytime like that you post a behind the scenes thing that like that there are a bunch of people that are like, oh my gosh, this is exactly the content that I want, that like people like weird people like me reach out to be like, will you talk to me about this, like how does that, what is that feeling like?
It really feels like being part of a family. Like, I think that the TTRPG space is by far and large the most like welcoming and loving space that I have ever been in as a like industry professional. I think often in the entertainment industry, like the hours are really long. Like it can be really, really like physically, emotionally, mentally taxing to work in TV, film, theater, and being in this space with my collaborators, coworkers, like the larger community of creators, and then the larger community of the fan base is like, it feels like being in like a like multi-layered cake family, and and I'm really grateful to have found my way into this space because like it just feels like there's nothing but love, like from everyone around me. And then from like, I feel like I also have so much love to give. So having that be just like this amazing resonant appreciation for everything that everyone is doing, and like appreciation for like all of the people watching, like that kind of feedback is so important to us as artists. So yeah, it feels amazing. It feels, yeah, it feels like a family.
It's, I mean, so good to hear. Not only because I want to continue to do this series, this like interview series, just like with all of you for forever, but that also like like as someone who has somehow built a weird little corner of the internet around being a fan of this type of content, Dropout at large, but Dimension 20 a lot of it. Like I can't, like it's really, I don't know, it feels very welcoming and open and like very special to be even like tangentially a part of.
Yeah.
um so I know I said I wouldn't ask you about anything about junior year, and I'm not going to ask you anything specific about junior year, but oh, how excited are you about junior year?
So excited. Oh my god. Like, yeah, it's just amazing right out the gate, and then it just keeps getting better. Like, you thought you saw some amazing stuff, just wait, all vague, very exciting things that, just
Yep. Perfect, perfect answers.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. When I talked to Kelsey, oh man, I don't remember if this was on the interview or not. But I was like, yeah, I would love to chat with you again, like maybe at the end of junior year. And she's like, you're gonna want to talk to me a couple times during junior year. And I was like, oh shit, like
Yeah.
things are serious.
Yeah.
So
I would say like
I certainly hope.
every time something comes on screen, it's unbelievably exciting in a new way. So
It's fantastic. I know I mentioned that Bria has talked about this as an arms race, and boy, does it feel good to like have a nice arms race, huh? But like specifically that like that things are going to keep getting better. And I mentioned this to Rick. Like a lot of us have been here for. I mean, not the whole time, but like started like cut our Dimension 20 teeth on freshman year. And really, I think as fans, we're all excited to see the progression since sophomore year was live and didn't have any minis, that like that progression of like what the team did in freshman year to what the team can do in junior year. And I know everyone on the internet who likes Dimension 20 cannot wait.
Yeah. I'm very excited for it to be shared.
Although we are also, yes, we are also, of course, very excited to see the end of Burrow's End. So,
yeah, get ready for that
so
too.
Much. Yeah, thank you so much for taking some time with me today. This was so wonderful. I know I've plugged birdpair.com. Where else can people find you on the internet to come see the cool behind the scenes stuff?
Yeah, I have, my Instagram is Raven S. Bartlett, my first name, middle initial, last name. And then my Twitter X, whatever we're calling it now, is, I think, Raven _ Bartlett. So I have all sorts of
I'll put it on the screen. I'll figure it out. Look, I'm the same way. I made an Instagram that's food based, and then I don't post on it. And I'm the Jordan Brown on TikTok, and it's too late to get it on Instagram. So I can't get a unique like brand anyway.
Yep.
This was so much fun. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. Everyone loves all of your work so much.
We love